On Wednesday, the 27th of February 2019, the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs held a national strategic consultation on the social response to crime in Barbados. In delivering the feature address at the Lloyd Erskine Sandyford Center, Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs Cynthia Ford said undoubtedly the country is experiencing an unprecedented period of change.
So disturbing are crime and violence, they are now considered public health threats, particularly to small island development states such as ours. The World Bank, in a recent report, informed that crime and violence are not only impeding economic growth, but they stymie human welfare and hinder social development. Further, it informs that violent crimes are undoubtedly a developmental issue having direct and immediate effect on human development in the short term and on the economic growth and development in the long term. Historians in particular, and those in the realm of academia, often reflect on our sordid past and blame particularly our history and geography for those socio-economic ills. Hence, they conclude that whatever gains we may have realized through independence are being erased and our national sovereignty and governance threatened. The net effects are increased poverty, higher crime rates, growing insecurity, and corruption. We are all aware of the scourge of drugs as a most worrying issue, which confronts us here in Barbados and, as I said, in the region and the world. As stakeholders, we have not only to contend with the use of these narcotics, but to eradicate their importation and transshipment. It is essential that this is pursued with vigor, since the drug trade is at the heart of violence and the absence of social cohesion and human development. To fight the narcotic trade necessitates the employment of scarce human and monetary resources, which could be better utilized for the betterment of our citizens. Violent crime, as you know, also negatively impacts business and investment. This is evident when access to finance or foreign direct investment is no longer made available as a result of the scarce resources being redirected to fight crime. Human development retrogresses to those sectors such as education and health and are starved of those resources which allow for human advancement. In addition to the scourge of drugs, crime is compounded by hardened criminals who, when deported, bring with them their culture and criminal activity, which is shared with the young and not so hardened criminal elements within our society. Of course, we have some visitors who come in as well that are not Barbadians. This too needs to be considered in your deliberations here today, and the solutions found as to how best not to have such knowledge passed to the vulnerable without infringing their rights and that of others. One suggestion is that deporting countries assist in the development and implementation of programs to allow for such persons to be integrated into society as an asset and not a liability. It is also pertinent that documentation must therefore be shared by the countries from which the deportees are sent, so that the constabulary and, of course, the justice system have proper data and documentation to be able to track them down. And if that is not happening, to my mind, that is something that has to happen. And the Attorney General, in his distinguished position, will have to deal with that matter, but with us feeding the information from what we have got here today and for future consultations of this nature. It is my opinion that for crime to be removed from the landscape of our island, there is need for a cohesive, holistic, innovative, and integrated approach. For this goal to be realized, ladies and gentlemen, the crime preventive measures which you recommend today must of necessity address not only economic development, but good governance, and the rule of law must be included in all your discussions. My ministry will continue to focus on the social cohesiveness of the society. To this end, we have in place two major projects which target intergenerational poverty. The first is known as the IC Bridge Project, and it is funded by the government of Barbados. And the second is funded by a loan from the Inter-American Development Bank and the government of China. The major goal is to strengthen human and social development in Barbados. These two projects aim to identify, stabilize, enable, and empower the most vulnerable in the society. Hence, the intent is to ensure that such persons are removed from abject poverty to become employed, self-employed, and employers in the long run. With this in mind, therefore, the Honorable Prime Minister has mandated that the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs undertake a household rapid poverty assessment aimed at gathering information on the living conditions of the poor and vulnerable in the society and ranking them according to the most needy in order to offer them the necessary assistance.
Stakeholders gathered for the consultation also got an update on the status of crime in the country from Deputy Commissioner of Police Erwin Boyce.
The first acknowledges that notwithstanding the fact that reported serious crime rates have fallen in the past years, the majority of public still feels that crime is on the increase. We accept that the public do not base their views on our stats, but on what they experience and what they see happening around them. For us, we recognize that there is a new wave of fear and anxiety that pervades society. In this consultation, I'm not inclined to convince that reported serious crime is down and that my stats are accurate. But I want to show that your sense of insecurity and fear, in many instances, is triggered to a large extent by signs of disorder, such as damage to property, unkept properties, poor lighting, and perceived unwelcome assemblies. Noting that unwelcome assemblies is seen more so from the outside than from within the community. We share that an individual's perception of safety determines their sense of security in the area. That perception is built from selective observed or reported events that individuals regard as significant signals. Most people are not victims of traditionally defined criminality, but they do come across signs of disorder and crimes such as large groups of youth misbehaving or damaging property. In characterizing the security of an area, individuals often base their understanding of their security on such. I admit that officially, crime stats are virtually blind to disorder events. They do not account in official stats for disorder events, and hence can be poor indicators of the sense of security in a community. This accounts for the so-called reassurance gap and explains why the police is no longer judged by traditional methods and may not enjoy the confidence of the community, notwithstanding the fact that our clear rate and the speed at which we clear crime are quite good. I will nonetheless give a succinct report on the current status of crime, as was invited to do. The crime rates in Barbados is usually classified under two distinct heads, major or minor crime. And I take into consideration that you're not focusing on gun violence or firearm-enabled crime. You are looking at crime and crime in the broader context. These heads are further divided to account for major crime against the person, major crime against property, and in the minor crime category, minor crime against property, minor crime against the person, as well as public order breaches. Major crime includes murder, manslaughter, robbery, endangering life, serious bodily harm, and that in itself can point to a shooting offense, aggravated burglary, commercial burglaries, residential burglaries, and sexual offenses, including rape. Minor crimes include drug-related offenses, assaults, harassment, threats, and simple woundings. Our provisional stats as at 23rd of February 2019 show that major crime is about 21% lower than it was for the same period in 2018. I almost say clap. In absolute figures, we have seen 60 less serious crimes for the year. Yes, murders have risen by 200%, from 4 over the same period in 2018 to 12 in 2019. However, crimes such as robbery, aggravated burglary, and theft from the person, as well as residential burglaries, have decreased over the same period. Other crimes included drug-related offenses, public order breaches, minor assaults, have in fact shown an increase, and the increase is in the tune of 16%.
Fraud and the increasing use of technological advancements to commit crime are also causing a significant challenge for the force.
The wide range of possible frauds, together with underreporting and increasingly global nature of many frauds, make it difficult to form a comprehensive picture of the scale and nature of the problem. Nonetheless, it's clear that financial losses suffered by victims are substantial, and fraud, to my mind, constitutes a major threat. Fraud affects everyone indirectly, since revenue loss and cost of measures to combat it is reflected in taxes, public services, and higher prices. Criminals have increasingly exploited the advantage in technology, particularly the growth of internet, to develop new crime and transform traditional ones. They have demonstrated the intent, imagination, and ability to exploit IT and to identify new criminal opportunities. The majority of malicious software, malware, is designed to steal financial data such as credit card details, bank account, password, etc. Of course, the internet and social media afford for effective and efficient communication and the creation of large networks. We have seen not any major rise in sexual offenses, in particular in stranger-driven rapes. But we have noticed that social media plays an integral role in most reported sexual offenses committed against young girls. They hook up on the social media, they meet, and then they are forced into what can be considered date rape sex.
Director of the Criminal Justice Research Unit, Cheryl Willoughby, presented the findings of a study on gun violence and gang activity in Barbados.
We conducted some research into the prison where we interviewed 200 prisoners who are incarcerated for gun-related offenses. 172 of them were on remand, while 28 were convicted for gun-related offenses. The age range was, we had between 21 years to 30 years for those persons who were there for gun-related offenses. Out of the 200 inmates, 199 were males, and there was one female involved. The results of interfacing with these persons incarcerated for gun-related offenses reveal that expulsion from school was the leading cause of non-completion of secondary school by those inmates. It accounted for 27.5% of those persons who dropped out, followed by inmates who left school of their own volition. This accounted for 27%. The mean age of the inmates discontinuing school was 15. And throughout our research, we continue to see a number of young children who are either expelled or who are not involved in the school system under the age of 16. 44% of those inmates that we interviewed interfaced previously with the juvenile justice system. That means that there is a problem or an issue with recidivism among young people who are already in the system, meaning that they are committing offenses although they are involved in the system. 41% of inmates had a criminal history of firearm-related offenses, with 13% of these offenses resulting in convictions. So in other words, persons who are at prison for gun-related offenses have previously committed offenses of a similar nature. When we asked them what was the motivator for the firearm use and or possession, these persons indicated that it was for protection. We also did a gang study because we recognized that there was this concern, not only in Barbados but across the region, whether we had a problem with gangs or if we just had a couple of young people coming together to be mischievous. And so we thought that it was important for us to have empirical data as it relates to whether or not Barbados is experiencing a problem with gangs. The research revealed that there were over 50 identified blocks in Barbados, and this spanned both the rural as well as the urban areas, with 6 dominant gangs being identified by the Special Branch Unit of the police. The bigger gangs, they had membership ranging from between 25 to 30 to 50 persons, and the smaller gangs had members ranging from 15 to 30 persons. It was gleaned that the general age range for membership was between 17 to 40, and the mean age was mid-20s. But nevertheless, our research also revealed that youngsters as young as 15 years old were frequenting blocks. Crimes committed by these groups were wide and varied, as alluded to by the Deputy Commissioner, and these crimes included robberies, theft, drug possession, distribution, firearm possession, serious bodily harm, woundings, murder, and other violent crimes. And we recognize from our research that some gangs were also very organized with regard to their criminal activities. The question must be asked, what is driving our young people to get involved in gang-related as well as gun-related activities? And our research revealed, you can go to the next slide, Madupe. There are war infractions among young people from the various communities across Barbados. You would have heard about it on numerous occasions from many stakeholders. We have a situation, as spoken to by the Deputy Commissioner, where there's easy access to firearms in Barbados. During our research, we learned of a phenomenon I want to refer to as the circle, where inmates spoke of being in groups where firearms can be easily obtained and passed from one person to another if you are a member of a particular circle or group. Inmates revealed that they were prepared to spend as much as $10,000 to purchase a firearm, and firearms are rented on some occasions.
Registrar of the Supreme Court, Barbara Cook Aline, revealed that efforts are on to stem the tide of juveniles going before the law courts. She says an initiative introduced in 2014 called Law in Action has been bearing fruit.
What I realized, statistics showed, from the age of 13, 14, 15, that's the ones coming before the court, that full former, not third former, but they're going to full form, the skirt and bodice excitement, the long pants excitement, they're changing in a way you don't believe it. And those are the ones who come in numbers before the court. What we did, invited them to the court to see the law in action, how it treats young juveniles that come to the court. And it had a great impact on them. We've continued again this year. The Ministry of Education is here, and they reached out to us again this year to make sure we could do that among, this time, not the general body of the school, but those who were delinquent and in need of seeing the system in action along with their parents. So the parental aspect came into it, because parents are integral in changing children. The impact they have is incredible. It could be negative or positive, so you need to have them on board when you're looking at different projects to bring children back in line or crime back in line where it should be. Now, I know that we're all concerned about the amount of guns and violence we're seeing in Barbados, but believe it or not, there are a lot of good young people out there, more good than bad. So don't let that fear get over you. There are more good than bad. Don't be terrified. There are more good than bad. I said it 3 times. I think P.S. Howard would say, we say it 3 times at school. Damn LC, say it 3 times, it's in your head. So I said it 3 times for it to resonate in your head. There are more good than bad. We need to work together. Persons like Ms. Willoughby and her department, we need them to get statistics. We can actually plan our projects together to see how we can save our young people and keep Barbados safe. We're not the gatekeeper. We're the last person to lock that gate. But you all are the gatekeepers. We rely on you to make sure they don't come to us in those numbers. Utopia is that nobody come, but it's no utopia. But just to make sure most of them don't come before the law courts. It's about reforming our young people and restoring justice, looking at the victims, see how we can help the victims get through this. Hear their story as well. Person plead guilty, you still want to hear what happened to the victim, get their impact. You want to compensate them for the injury. A new juvenile act will come along sometime soon, I hope. And it's interesting, because our act is very old, that we actually operate on now. It's in the 19th century. So imagine the laws and the punishment in there are now considered cruel and unusual in some circumstances. You can send a child off on a boat as punishment. So you don't enforce that in the 21st century. For restorative justice, where each person gets to say and say what they want to say, the child sacrificed their PlayStation, their toy to the victim for a while, to recognize that what they did was in fact beyond reproach and now need to get back around to where they should be. So we're doing a lot of things together. The court is open to ideas from other persons, how we can actually help those who are in need. For the person on the bond, if you say you want to do something at the church, we can put that part as the bond condition as well. So we have to work as a team to get it done.
Anglican Bishop, the Right Reverend Michael Maxwell, believes many of the people who have turned to a life of crime have themselves been victims of neglect in the early stages of their development.
I certainly don't believe that the criminals in our society were, as some would like to suggest, predestined to be criminals, but rather that they would have faced some personal, social, and even cultural challenges and have developed a sense of emptiness or meaninglessness or hopelessness that produced the hatred and the bitterness and the anger and the covetousness resulting in a life of crime and violence. You know, as was recently shared in yesterday's Nation, the article written by Sanka Price from an interview he would have had with Sabrina Roach, the criminologist. Most of our criminals have a background of being considered unachievers, underachievers, or being school dropouts, and face, therefore, unemployment, and so they turned to a life of crime. It is therefore needful for early intervention in the homes, in the schools, in the communities in which we live. As you know, I was only recently again yesterday discussing with a gentleman by the name of Mr. John Goddard, who is the chairman of our Social Justice Commission in our diocese, and Canon Missioner, who is here present, Canon Wayne Isaacs, that there is the need for intervening on behalf of those troubled youth, in hope that such an intervention will lead to redemption, will lead to rehabilitation, will lead to the prevention from a life of crime. It is the intervention that I believe, therefore, should really be our main focus today, rather than simply prevention by way of more armed forces, or even the offering of the public with licensed firearms. The problem we face is systemic. And the modus operandi I would suggest is that of Jesus's: to seek and to save, rather than to condemn and destroy.
The consultation brought together stakeholders from public and private sector entities, faith-based organizations, service organizations, and the media.